Karen Whitmore's designer heels slipped on the wet grass as she stumbled toward what used to be her favorite unauthorized parking spot. Where her pristine white BMW should have been parked sat a perfectly circular koi pond, complete with lily pads and a small fountain gurgling mockingly in the morning sun. "What in the actual hell?" she shrieked, her voice echoing across the normally quiet Meadowbrook Gardens HOA community. 3 months earlier, Karen had discovered the perfect loophole. The parking space in front of Unit 47B wasn't technically assigned to anyone, a clerical error in the original HOA documents. While the elderly resident, Mr. Chen, had been using it for 15 years, Karen's legal background told her possession wasn't ownership. She'd started parking there daily, ignoring Mr. Chen's polite requests and the passive-aggressive notes left on her windshield. "Mrs. Whitmore." Mr. Chen appeared from behind his rose bushes, wearing mud-stained gardening gloves and the most satisfied smile she'd ever seen. "Beautiful morning, isn't it? Perfect for enjoying the new water feature." Karen's face flushed crimson. As the HOA president, she knew every bylaw, every regulation, every comma in their community guidelines. But as she frantically scrolled through her phone, searching for violations, she found nothing. The pond was entirely on Mr. Chen's property line, installed with proper permits she somehow hadn't been notified about. "You can't just. This is clearly meant to." Karen sputtered, her usual commanding presence dissolving into incoherent rage. "Meant to what?" Mr. Chen's voice carried decades of suppressed frustration. "Create a peaceful environment for my golden years? The same years you've spent making my life miserable with your rules and regulations." Other neighbors began emerging from their homes, drawn by Karen's theatrical display. Margaret from 43C peered over her fence, barely concealing her grin. The Johnson twins from the corner unit had their phones out, clearly recording. Even Mrs. Patterson's ancient poodle seemed to be judging her. "This is harassment," Karen declared, pointing dramatically at the pond. "I'll have this removed by noon." "Good luck with that," Mr. Chen replied calmly. "I followed every HOA procedure, filed the proper forms, got the required approvals from the architectural committee. Of course, you were too busy power tripping to pay attention to your own inbox." The truth hit Karen like ice water. She'd been so focused on tormenting Mr. Chen about the parking spot that she'd neglected her actual presidential duties. The permit approval emails sat unopened in her spam folder, automatically filtered because she'd blocked Mr. Chen's address months ago. As the crowd of neighbors grew larger, Karen realized she'd made a crucial error. Her reputation as the neighborhood's iron-fisted leader was crumbling in real time, and social media posts were probably already going viral. She needed a new strategy and fast. "This isn't over," she hissed, storming toward her car parked 3 blocks away. Behind her, Mr. Chen's fountain continued its cheerful bubbling, and she could swear she heard the sound of neighbors applauding. Karen spent the next week plotting her revenge with the methodical precision of a military campaign. Her home office, already cluttered with HOA bylaws and violation notices, now resembled a war room. Red string connected photos of Mr. Chen's property to city ordinances, and her laptop screen displayed multiple tabs of municipal codes. "There has to be something," she muttered, consuming her 4th espresso of the morning. Her husband Brad had long since stopped asking about her increasingly erratic behavior, choosing instead to work longer hours at his accounting firm. The breakthrough came on Thursday night. While cross-referencing the original subdivision plans from 1987, Karen discovered a discrepancy in the property surveys. Mr. Chen's pond, she realized with growing excitement, extended exactly 3 inches into what should have been common HOA property. "Gotcha," she whispered, her first genuine smile in days spreading across her face. By Friday morning, Karen had drafted a 17-page legal notice citing no fewer than 12 municipal violations. She'd also scheduled an emergency HOA board meeting, despite knowing that the other 4 board members were increasingly tired of her dramatic crusades. "This is about property rights," Karen announced to the sparse crowd gathered in the community center. Only 6 residents had bothered to attend, and 3 of them were clearly there for entertainment value. Board member Janet Morrison, a retired librarian with infinite patience, finally interrupted Karen's presentation. Have you actually measured the pond's boundaries, Karen? These survey maps are from 1987. The law is the law, Karen replied sharply. 3 inches is 3 inches. And what exactly do you propose we do? Asked Tom Bradley, the board's treasurer. Force an 80-year-old man to relocate his pond because of a measurement smaller than my coffee mug. The room erupted in arguments, with neighbors taking sides based more on their personal feelings about Karen than any actual property dispute. Margaret stood up, her voice cutting through the chaos. This is ridiculous, Karen. You're embarrassing our entire community over a parking spot. This isn't about parking, Karen shrieked, slamming her papers on the podium. This is about order, about rules, about respect for the HOI. But as she looked around the room, she saw nothing but tired, annoyed faces staring back at her. Even Mrs. Patterson's poodle looked disgusted. The meeting ended with the board voting 4-1 against pursuing any action regarding the pond. Karen was the sole dissenting vote, and as the room emptied, she found herself alone with her rage and her 17 pages of worthless legal research. Walking home in the darkness, Karen passed Mr. Chen's house. The pond's fountain had been fitted with underwater LED lights, casting a peaceful blue glow across his garden. A small bench had been added, and she could see him sitting there with a cup of tea, looking more content than she'd ever seen him. For a moment, something twisted in Karen's chest, a feeling she couldn't quite identify. Was it envy? Regret? The emotion was quickly buried under a fresh wave of indignation. If the board wouldn't support her, she'd take matters into her own hands. Karen Whitmore had never backed down from a fight, and she wasn't about to start now. At 3:47 a.m. on Tuesday morning, Karen crept across her neighbor's lawn carrying a bag of concrete mix and a garden hose. If she couldn't force Mr. Chen to remove his pond legally, she'd make it uninhabitable. The plan was simple: dump the concrete, claim vandals had struck, and offer to help him fill in the damaged water feature. But as she approached the glowing pond, Karen froze. Sitting on the bench in his bathrobe was Mr. Chen, calmly sipping tea as if he'd been expecting her. Couldn't sleep either? He asked gently. Karen dropped the concrete bag, its contents spilling across the grass. For the first time in months, she was completely speechless. Sit down, Karen, Mr. Chen said, patting the bench beside him. Let's talk. Against every instinct, Karen found herself sitting. The fountain's gentle bubbling was oddly soothing, and the underwater lights revealed several small koi fish swimming peaceful circles. You know, I built this pond for my wife, Mr. Chen said quietly. She passed 3 years ago. Always wanted a garden where she could watch fish and feel peaceful. I kept putting it off, thinking we had more time. Karen stared into the water, her carefully constructed justifications crumbling. I didn't know about your wife. How could you? You've never asked me about anything except parking regulations and lawn maintenance schedules. His voice held no anger, only sadness. I've lived here longer than anyone except Mrs. Patterson. Watched families grow up, helped neighbors through divorces and job losses. But to you, I'm just another violation waiting to happen. The words hit Karen like physical blows. She thought about her reputation, her authority, her need to control every aspect of their community. When had she stopped seeing neighbors as people? I'm sorry, she whispered, the words feeling foreign in her mouth. I'm so sorry. They sat in silence for several minutes, watching the koi swim. Finally, Mr. Chen stood up. The concrete will wash off with the hose, he said. But next time you can't sleep, just knock on the door. I'll make tea. As Karen walked home, her mind raced with uncomfortable realizations. She'd spent 3 years as HOA president making enemies instead of building community. Her marriage was hanging by a thread, her neighbors avoided her, and she'd just attempted petty vandalism over a parking space. The next morning, Karen found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a handwritten letter from the HOA board, a unanimous vote of no confidence, and a request for her immediate resignation. But paper-clipped to the letter was something unexpected, a small photograph of Mr. Chen's pond taken at sunrise, with a handwritten note on the back. Sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the spaces we think belong to us. a neighbor who still believes in second chances. Karen stood in her doorway, clutching the photo, as neighbors began their morning routines around her. Margaret waved cautiously from her mailbox. The Johnson twins nodded politely as they jogged past. Even Mrs. Patterson's poodle seemed to regard her with less contempt. For the first time in years, Karen Whitmore had no idea what came next. But as she looked at the photograph of the peaceful pond, she realized that maybe, just maybe, not knowing was exactly where she needed to start.